What is up? Welcome back to Softcore History. I am your host for the week, Rob Fox, joined as always by Dan Regester.
Always a pleasure to be on the show, Rob.
Yeah, good to be back. Good to be back. And today, we don't have any history to talk about. We have history to talk to.
Oh, yeah.
Jack Mandaville is here, and we're not talking about some medieval knight who has the record for molesting girls in towns he pillaged or anything like that. We're talking about, well, I guess the towns you pillaged.
Yeah, not medieval style pillaging.
Yeah.
Not the raping and burning, but
Right.
definitely grabbed a few tokens along the way. Yeah. It'd been a long time since the American forces had invaded a country, probably since Vietnam, so our pillaging itch was in full.
It'd been a while.
It'd been a while,
It's been a while, because today we have Jack Mandaville on the show, veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Mm-hmm. And I was a member of the KISS Army, too, but that's a different episode.
Yes. And
Yeah.
there was pillaging in that one, in the old school style. But we won't talk about that today. I don't know if the statute of limitations is up on that. But we wanted to have Jack on for two reasons. One, we've never had anyone on the show who has been involved in a historical event. And two, Dan just started watching Generation Kill.
Yep.
That's a good series.
I binged it, I think, in a week.
That's one of those things is it wasn't a banger. It wasn't Band of Brothers or anything like that, House of Cards or whatever, House of Dragons. It wasn't a banger, but it will always hold up well.
Young Skarsgård.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That had a pretty impressive cast. And Rudy Reyes playing himself.
Peak Kellen Lutz, Twilight Kellen Lutz.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the hits go on with that.
But it was for sure a show that I think really nailed how dudes talk to each other.
Yes.
I think we know whether or not you were in the Army, like if you played football in high school,
Yeah,
or
if
you
you're
were
ever
in
in
a
a locker
fraternity,
room, yeah.
like anything like that, it is the best, maybe the best male dialogue I have ever heard in my life. Like if you are one of the three women listening to the show, and you want to know how it sounds when guys talk to each other,
Behind closed doors, yeah.
that Generation Kill. I mean, on the fucking mark.
It was done by the guys that did The Wire, and anybody that knows anything about that kind of East Coast law enforcement will tell you that The Wire is the most accurate cop show ever.
Yeah.
So same goes. I was never going to watch it because it was so personal to me, and I was familiar with the Rolling Stones article that led to the book that
Right.
obviously led to the series. But I was like, they're gonna fuck this up. And a friend of mine convinced me to watch it. I watched it, and I was like, this is the most fucking accurate war movie ever.
Yeah.
None of that flowery romantic language of why we're fighting.
Right.
It's literally a bunch of
Even though I love the movie Fury, I assume that no one has ever in war been like, there's still more killing to do, still more dying to do.
best job I ever had. Like, yeah, saying that unironically, it's probably been very rare people have actually said that.
Right.
Yeah.
BK, Burger King, some baby killers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do they keep calling them Burger King?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think?
Everything was like the J-Lo.
That was real, right?
That was real. The way that they focused so much on a rumor was so important to the reality of that series. Like, that's something that we were all stressed out about. And that was before cell phones.
She was your Helen of
and
Troy.
We didn't have Wi-Fi or anything like that.
Right. You just rumors.
We just were hearing stuff, and literally it's all we could talk about. As we're about to invade a country, all we could talk about was J-Lo.
What's really funny too, what I love about that show, before we get into talking about your shit, is this is more of a show, but you're a writer as well. I actually recently watched some of your episodes of was it Checkpoint Charlie?
Yes, I didn't write that, but I was.
It was written by you.
I co-created
Okay,
it. Yeah,
okay.
we outlined the episodes, but Greg Kelly did most of the legwork for the writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before you get into it, Rob, is it true that you guys would never carry those like charm candies?
That's true. Yep. And I'll never forget the first time, because no one ever told me when I was in boot camp or my infantry. I didn't learn until I got to the fleet, and I got to the fleet literally like 14 days before we crossed the border.
Yeah.
I checked in with my unit in Kuwait as we were fixing to go into that country, and I'll never forget. I literally had my NCO grab it out of my hands and throw it off the vehicle and lectured me about not eating charms. That was a real thing.
That goes back to World War II or something. It's just like a bad luck omen to have those on you, on your person at all times.
Yeah, just one. It's just one of those things that existed before I got there. That's sure.
That's really funny.
I don't think they put those things in MREs anymore. I think that.
Why would they even still be there?
It's an extinct product.
One thing that I love about that show, though, from a writing or whatever standpoint, is because a lot of times, and I've dealt with this, like when I've worked with like my writing partner, who I love, but and you deal with this when you talk to like people who are like a bit higher up, who are like looking at your scripts and stuff like that, and they're like, oh, like like. Where's the lost all hope moment? And you got to hit these story beats and stuff like that. Generation Kill, nothing happens. It just shows them for 7 hours.
Bullshitting.
Yeah.
Couple firefights here and there.
Like there's no story arc. There's no resolution to anything.
There's no music.
They just come in.
Well, they sing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You come in at one point and you watch them for a while and then it's over. And it's so fucking good. To the point where I just watch that and look, it's hard to do. Like typically you do have to hit story beats because people are dumb and they like to see the same things and they like patterns. But I just like watching that. I was just like, this is great. Like this is almost like bro ASMR. Like it's just like if you want to make it sound like you're just sitting in a room full of friends.
Yeah.
Well, it does conclude, right? They conquer Iraq in 21 days, and then they're just kind of sitting in Baghdad, figuring out what to do. That was the war. We didn't win. We just kind of stayed.
We thought we did. We're like, I'll never have to come back here again. Evan Wright, who wrote the book, and I believe he did the screenplay as well, or contributed to it. Brilliant. R.I.P. Evan Wright. He passed away recently. He really does open the book up well. Basically, the appropriate title was Generation Kill, but it really does capture the older millennial age group during that time very well. Like these are kids, they didn't grow up reading Dick Tracy novels like your grandparents did. They grew up playing Grand Theft Auto and learning to beat up fucking hookers in video games.
Watching like Beavis and Butthead and South
now,
Park.
Yes, and now they're at war, right? They are so much more desensitized than previous generations.
Yeah, 100%. So let's get into... We're just going to run through I got questions for you, and I'm sure a million questions will pop up in the meantime. But let's get this out of the way, actually, first, before we get into, you're a U.S. Marine, first Marine Division, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into more stuff about that, but I got to get this out of the way because you texted me about it last night, and I'm not going to be able to move on until we talk about this first. What was the most fucked up thing you saw during the invasion?
Dude, I don't know if I want to, okay, it is... I saw a lot of dead, burning bodies, and again,
don't rattle the PTSD cage.
Yeah, no, but like talk about the desensitized thing.
He texted me. I didn't ask.
I know.
This
you know
question
why?
wouldn't have been on here if he hadn't texted me this.
Because I was drinking and I was having a therapy session. Because I blocked that out of my head for probably like 12, 13 years. And then one day in 2017, I was just driving down the road, just having a normal day. And that memory flooded back out of nowhere. And I was like, oh, fuck, that happened. That happened. I have not thought about this in years. No, it's weird. I saw a lot of death and all that, as you do. And I never lost sleep over that. I never had any issues. And then I saw a kid getting diddled. And it
on the
was
side of the road.
It was so bad that obviously my brain blocked that out for years. And I get it now. Remember that he was like a graduate assistant or something, or an assistant coach for Penn State?
Yeah. The redheaded dude. I forget his name.
He's the one that saw that kid getting molested, and he did the right thing. He reported it. And then a lot of people gave him shit. Like, why didn't he follow up with that? Why didn't he ask questions?
Right.
I can understand how his brain might have fucking blocked that out.
Yeah, like it's just like does not compute.
Yeah,
cannot. Like if you
we're just gonna shove that in the back.
If you're just driving down the road and somebody's just like sawing a homeless man up.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You're probably just gonna be like, that's not real. I'm not remembering.
Yeah,
that.
I must have saw that in a movie.
Mike McQuarrie for Penn State.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did everything right, and what he took shit for, I can completely understand how his brain might have just shut that memory out.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. So one thing I love about talking to you about this, now that that's out of the way, is that...
Yeah, so that's the most fucked up thing I've ever seen in my life. It was so fucked up.
Just in a ditch?
No, just on the side of the road, man. I don't even want to go into detail. It was just, and you got to understand, I wasn't the only one that saw that. We all kind of looked at each other. No one ever spoke of it again.
It's fucking insane. So I'll actually have a point on that later.
That was in Tikrit. I remember what city that was in.
Yeah. It's all back now. It's all like I could take you to that road right now.
That was Saddam Hussein's hometown. Bunch of child molesters and Baathists.
But you repeat yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is one thing I like talking to you about. So I've met other Iraq veterans, and actually Dan Holloway is a history buff as well. But I haven't asked him this question. But I feel like I haven't talked to a lot of vets who are necessarily history buffs. You're a history buff, and you were a history buff before the war, certainly too.
Oh,
right?
I grew up.
Right. So
that coming naturally to me, I suppose.
Even though the Iraq War had still has big ramifications on the world and stuff like that, it's not a major historical war in the grand scheme of things.
Not compared to Normandy or anything
right,
like
World
that.
War
no.
One or even like the I don't know, say the Peloponnesian War, the Punic Wars or something. You know what I mean? Like it's a minor conflict in the grand scale.
Yeah, when we had other major nations as our allies and adversaries.
Right.
Yeah, we had, who do we have with us? The Brits and the El
2003?
Salvadorians. Yeah.
The coalition
Some
of the
Polish guys.
Yeah. Mostly the Brits, I guess. And I actually have a question on them later. But so I wonder, what did you think, if anything, going into the war? Like, what do you think a good comp for the Iraq War is? So to me, I always think, even though it's kind of a different political circumstance, I always kind of think of it as just like almost the equivalent of like English colonial wars against like the Zulus or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's obviously major combat and terrifying combat, and it's a real fight. It's not like
we had such an advantage with technology. And
in 03, yeah, we had the complete upper hand.
But like, what did you think about what type of war it was going in? Because obviously, like you said, like you're not fighting in World War II. You're not like it's a smaller conflict than that.
You're fighting dudes in pajamas.
Did you think about it in terms of like, oh, this is more like this war from history than it is like Napoleon at Waterloo or something like that?
Well, you're right. It would have been closer to like a Zulu war colonial conflict type of thing. I've thought of this though. The fighting obviously is completely different, but if I had to compare the Iraq War to any other war in American history, I would compare it to, in the big picture, I'd compare it to the Korean War.
Okay.
And this is why. Similar to the Korean War, Americans, at the beginning they did, during the invasion, people were glued to their TVs from what I understand. But after that, nobody really gave a shit. Everyone kind of forgot we had people over there. And it never affected the quality of life in America. Like World War II, people had to ration. Everybody had to do their
World War
part.
I, II, and the Civil War, like that affected the home front. So
the home front, where, Korea, like Iraq, nothing changed back home. And eventually people kind of forgot we were over there doing that. Every once in a while, I'd make the news with Fallujah or the surge. But other than that,
yeah, like every 2-3 years. Because I remember, so the invasion happened when I was a junior in high school.
Yeah.
And then Fallujah was, I think, my freshman year of college. So I remember that like rolling back up in the news a lot. And Fallujah was a horrific battle and everything.
That was huge.
But
that was the largest urban operation since that was a big battle.
Yeah, but even still, what's crazy about that is that was a big battle, but like it was still kind of small historically, like in terms of just sheer numbers, horrific combat and everything like that. But it's just interesting to me because you see it's not like Stalingrad, right? It's not like some crazy.
It's not random Chinese War #2.
No, yeah, it's not 50,000 Chinese guy running with bayonets over a hill to your a battalion's worth of soldiers or Marines.
But does history come into your mind at all as a history buff as you're like thinking about getting ready, or is it even or
at the time, literally all I had to go off of what that kind of combat might look like was Black Hawk Down had just come out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I was imagining it might be.
Yeah.
And in certain parts of that war, it was like that.
Yeah.
I didn't experience that during the invasion.
Right.
We were, for the most part, rural until we got into Baghdad, and then we did Task Force Tripoli into Tikrit there.
That's kind of something they hammer in Generation Kill is they never really feel like they're in danger during the invasion. They almost feel invincible.
Yeah, I mean, I had my perspective, and again, I was I was 3 months out of boot camp. Like, I literally got done with boot camp, went to my infantry school, did another school, and literally graduated from that school, got on a plane, and landed in Kuwait like March 6th. And then we went over like
March 20th.
March 20th.
Yeah.
So I barely knew who the people in my chain of command were. I had, it might as well have been a giant training mission to me because I had no context of what war was supposed to be like.
Yeah. So one thing is, actually real quick before we get it, you mentioned something about how it didn't affect the home front or whatever, and people would, I don't know if I've told you this. I think I've said this on the show before. My experience with the invasion of Iraq was the first time I realized that I lived in the future, that I lived in almost benevolent kind of dystopian.
Just
future.
watching combat footage?
Because I was homesick that week, and it's March 20th when the invasion happened. So I'm a history buff too, right? So I'm like, history is on television right now. So I'm watching it, but it was shock and awe first, right? So I'm watching it, I'm seeing stuff, and I'm like, oh, it's not a lot going on right now. So I just flip over to college basketball because it was the conference tournaments. It was like the Big 10 tournament, the Big 12 tournament. And I was just like, I am sitting in my basement, flipping between a war and college basketball when there's no good war stuff on.
Yeah.
Like that, even in the moment, I was like, this is fucking insane.
You had that perspective as a teenager?
I swear to God, I did. Yeah, absolutely. I was a history buff. I was like, this is crazy.
I was like 12, so no, I didn't.
I was 17.
I didn't think that way.
I was 17. I didn't say you thought that way. But like that to me, like, and you're right, it didn't affect me at all. I was like, oh, the war's boring right now. I think Michigan's in overtime. Let's go to that game. Let's go.
Yeah.
Watch that for a little while. And I was just like, watching that, I was just like, this country might be invincible. Like,
yeah,
this is
I mean,
fucking crazy.
The only thing that really was a giant obstacle to us was the weather at times.
Yeah.
There was the biggest sandstorm in 20, 30 years in Iraq occurred when we were probably day 3 or 4, and it stopped the entire division.
Do they call those haboobs?
I think it's called a shamal, if
A
I'm not
shamal there,
mistaken.
Okay.
And yeah, that put us dead in our tracks for probably 24 hours or more.
How fucking shitty was that, sitting in a sandstorm?
Oh, it was horrible. You couldn't see you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. We had dudes get lost. Golly, I was just with a bunch of my old Marine buddies not long ago, and one of them was telling a story about how they got lost. They ran into a vehicle in another company, which by the way, you don't know anybody else in any other company.
Right.
You might as well just be a fucking guy off the street, even though you're on the same side. So they had to like hunker down with these random Marines. It was like the ghetto version of the Normandy invasion where they all dropped into different...
everywhere. Yeah. Fuck. And I assume like just sand is up every fucking
crevice. And I was a driver in an LAV, so I could at least like kind of button myself inside of the vehicle, and it was still covering the inside of the vehicle and
everywhere.
Yeah.
Did you have to drop your pants and take a deuce during the storm, or?
Oh, you know what?
What was the worst poop you had to take during the war?
I'll tell you. I was thinking about this in the car right over. Talk about memories flooding back. When we got to Kuwait, you're doing all that long travel. We were probably stressed and for various reasons. And then now you're eating this you went from having Burger King at the PX back at Camp Pendleton to now you're eating nothing but this processed shit food. And I didn't shit. The first dump I took was literally the night before the invasion happened. And I was on watch. So it was me and my buddy Nick.
Yeah.
We had to watch the entire battalion's ammo. All the ammo was stacked up in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
And it was just 2 PFCs out there guarding it. And I took a gigantic dump because I hadn't shit in like 4 or 5 days. It was painful. It was horrible. And then the next day, literally the same place I took a dump is where my vehicle had to grab all of its ammo from. And my Dookie was sitting there right next to the ammo boxes. And all my scouts in the back, the 0311s, they were all like, what the fuck? Oh, gross. I'm like, I don't know, man. That could have been from a fox or something. Who knows?
Like, that was a goddamn cougar that did that.
Yeah.
Lions out here?
Yeah, just out there in the middle of nowhere. I remember I jerked off that night while I was holding the forget what they're called. It's not the NVGs. It's the one.
The single one.
Yeah, the single one. I was just sitting there, manning my post, jerking off. Yeah, and that was after I dumped. It cleared everything up. I got horny again. And,
How often would you combat jerk?
So from the actual start of the invasion, I didn't jerk until things had calmed down like over 3 weeks later.
Okay. Was it just commonplace to see one of your fellow soldiers just jacking?
Yeah,
it?
you'd see people jacking. Yeah, and then I don't know how to describe an LAV, but I kind of had the front all to myself where the driver is. It's the only real privacy inside that vehicle. You kind of have your own little alone area there, but you can see the turret behind you, so then you can see people jerking it in the turret. And I had one of my scouts, his nickname was I don't know if I want to say his nickname. I actually did a documentary about him recently. People might know who I'm talking about. But I'd see him coming out of my driver's hole. This is back when you'd have Polaroid pictures of your girl back home. And again, it's one of those things that's the driver's hole. That's their space. That was my kingdom. And so that got a couple fights started from that. Like, what the fuck? You sick fuck. Yeah. Yeah.
So one thing that's funny, not funny, but like about the second invasion of Iraq, like the second Persian Gulf War or whatever. If you remember before the first one, just like historically, if you remember before the first one, I feel like America was like, we don't know how this is going to go. Like, remember Saddam Hussein was like, it's going to be the mother of all battles. I think at the time, Iraq had like the 5th largest army in the world.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, it was
horribly funded, but they were huge.
Yeah, and had a ton of Soviet, older but Soviet tanks and stuff like that, huge tank divisions. And America, I feel like, was kind of bracing itself for a bloody fight, right? Like a really, in 91. That didn't happen, obviously. They rolled over the Iraqi
complete upper hand, yeah.
What was the expectation going in 03 for you guys? Because I feel like even like documentaries and stuff I've watched about the first Iraq War, they were like, yeah, they told us, man, it was going to be fucking like intense. It was going to be crazy. Like, expect a lot of casualties and stuff like that. And then we got in there and it was easier than a training mission.
Yeah.
What was the? I assume because the first one had already happened, that wasn't necessarily the expectation going in for round 2. But what was like the expectation of combat expectations or the type of like resistance you would see?
I remember when we kind of knew we were going over. Now, you got to understand, too. I was probably 7 years old when Desert Storm happened. So that's some of my earliest memories of watching a war myself. But you got to understand, remember in the 90s, we did a bunch of buildups over there, and it was supposed to happen. And the Clinton, flex. And we had done a big buildup in, I think, 97, 98, and nothing came of that. So in my head, speaking purely for myself, I thought there was a big possibility it was going to be that again. We were just going to flex our nuts at the Kuwaiti border, and then nothing was going to come of it. I remember when the invasion actually kicked off, I was actually probably a little surprised it was happening. But I remember.
Fuck with you at all?
Huh?
Does that fuck with you at all? Where you're like, oh, good. Oh.
I can't express it enough. Had I been in the Marine Corps even 6 more months or a year, I probably would have had a completely different perception of what was going on. I was so brand new. I literally did not have a brain. My brain didn't exist.
You're just like, I guess we're doing this now.
Yes. Yeah. Like I'm just going to do what I'm told.
Yeah.
I wasn't super excited. I wasn't like super scared. I wouldn't say numb was the feeling that I had, but I knew that I didn't know what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
So I was just like going with the flow.
I feel like that's a good way to be.
Ideally, yeah, right?
Yeah,
I didn't overthink it or anything like
just
that.
Like, I'm supposed to drive now? All right, drive.
That was it?
Yeah.
Just do my job.
Yeah.
No, this is pretty common with any job, honestly. People kind of bitch and complain about their superiors. Were they wildly incompetent like they are portrayed in Generation Kill?
That, by the way, the Generation Kill unit was like elite. Right?
Yeah.
The Marine Recon.
They were recon. Yeah, they were, that's a thing that you get, you have to go through a selection process for.
Is that kind of like almost like the Marines Army Rangers type, or even more than that?
There's a lot of complexities to it. They were some of the best trained, best equipped Marines.
Yeah.
Most physically fit. Reconnaissance Marines are notoriously like studs in the water. They're just great swimmers.
Yeah.
So yes, they would have been some of the more elite Marine
Yeah.
troops out there. Mind you, it's coming from the perception of a journalist, and the only things he's hearing about the Marine Corps is from lower enlisted, E5s and below, and they're always going to bitch.
Yeah.
So was the company staff as incompetent? There might have been a little prejudice there coming from the Evan Wright. But, you know, as I'm a 41-year-old man now, and I now am around the people that are in charge at these higher levels.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are just dudes who are very capable of being fucked up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think they kind of touch on that at the end when the Godfather talks to Evan and says, hey, I hear this from somebody, but I hear this from somebody else. You got to kind of just take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it's not easy to be in charge of 700 people.
In
700
in a life and death situation.
21-year-olds.
Yeah.
That's not an easy position to be in for anybody.
That's the
Some people
craziest
handle
part.
it better than others.
Yeah, but from your experience, though,
Not in my company. We were a pretty well-oiled machine. In hindsight, I didn't. Again, at the time, I didn't have any frame of reference to what good leadership was. In hindsight, we were in a very good unit. We made mistakes. We fucked a couple things up. Had a couple friendly fire incidents, and no, it was a
Mistakes
good
happen.
unit.
yeah, mistakes happen. It's war.
I'm lucky.
Just admit you killed Pat
That
Tillman.
documentary I did,
He's in Afghanistan.
Yeah, just admit you killed Pat Tillman.
dude. Did I show you? I've been going hard on Grok lately.
Oh, you did show me.
I created a picture of Pat Tillman if he wasn't killed going to a VA appointment. He's like super fat and in a wheelchair.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is he wearing his Cardinal jersey?
Yeah.
He's like, oh,
Yeah. I've been real loose with Grok. No, you know that documentary that I produced?
Yes, yeah.
The War Pigs documentary?
yes, excellent documentary.
So that's the company I was with during the invasion.
Yeah.
So the company commander that I interviewed for the War Pigs documentary was my company commander.
Right. And the War Pigs, though, is about them in Fallujah, right?
That's a year later,
And
Fallujah.
Were you out by then, or
No, I went on a different deployment with a different company.
Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't do Fallujah, but about 50% of the guys, probably more, that I interviewed and that I went to LAV school with, they showed up at the same time I did for the invasion. Gil Juarez was my old company commander that during the invasion. So, yeah, I knew a lot of those fellas.
You touched on it a little bit. What exactly was your specific job?
I was a 0313, and if you're the most junior 0313 on a vehicle, you're the driver.
Okay.
So I was a driver.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you spent the whole invasion driving. What were you driving?
I was up in the turret a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, I was driving most of the time.
What is it? What vehicle was it again?
It was a LAV-25, a light armored vehicle.
Okay.
The United States, the Marine Corps is the only branch of service in the United States that uses them, and there's only 3 battalions, so it's a very small community. But the Canadians have a lot of them. Australians have a lot of them. They're popular in a lot of NATO countries.
Okay. Was it the type of thing? So again, I'm a history buff, but my military knowledge only goes so far, especially compared to you or anyone else.
Just say you're a bitch, dude.
I'm a bitch. I'm a little bitch. What? So is this like sort of like mechanized infantry versus like
Yes.
like there was a turret with machine guns on it and everything?
Yep.
But like, did you guys get out and
Yeah, so
like have to fight on foot and maybe clear houses
Yep.
or whatever the fuck?
yeah. So the vehicle crewmen, there's 3.
Yeah.
The driver, the gunner, and the vehicle commander. They're typically on the vehicle the entire time. But you carry 4 guys in the back.
Right.
So they're dismounts. They're scouts. It's very similar to the Army's cavalry role.
Yeah.
So those guys can pop out and clear houses and clear ditches. And
While someone
I relied on them a lot for loot since I couldn't get out of the vehicle. They brought me
grabbed
back.
something cool?
I got the loot that they didn't want. Yeah. So I do. I have like old Iraqi army berets and helmets and
That's fucking
all
sweet.
sorts of
Dude, I saw someone getting shamed on Twitter over Thanksgiving or Christmas because they were like, "Look what I'm serving my Christmas ham on," and it was an old Nazi plate.
that grandpa brought back.
Right. And I was
Yeah.
like, and people were like, oh, you're right. I was like, well, let's just not assume. I was like, if he's doing it because he likes the Nazis, then yeah, I guess fuck him.
It's
but
weird.
Like,
yeah.
More likely, he's just like, this is sweet.
Yeah.
And I'm going to serve my Christmas dinner on what Grandpa brought home. And that's awesome.
My grandpa frickin' swiped this fair and square. It's in the family now.
Dude, so I had a grandpa in Europe and a grandpa in the Pacific. Grandpa in the Pacific was a doctor, so he didn't really get to loot anything or whatever. But
Right.
like, man, if he had brought home a katana, I'd be cutting the turkey with that.
Oh yeah, he saw a lot of trench foot. That's for sure.
I would only serve Jewish food on that plate.
Yeah,
Jewish,
everything's
like,
got to
brisket,
be kosher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's how you get a poltergeist, I think. Just some spirit attached to the plate. It's just like,
A Nazi seance.
Oh, if you want some story time,
yeah, baby.
we were the first ones into Tikrit. I did Task Force Tripoli, and that was Saddam's whole hometown. My first bath in 30 days was swimming in the Euphrates. There it was I think it was the Euphrates. We each got our own fucking bath party palace to ourselves, and I looted.
What did you take from Saddam's palace?
I had been sitting on that damn seat, vibrating just hurting my ass for weeks. I took a pillow just so I could have something to sit on, and then I still have that pillow to this day. I'm like, I have one of Saddam Hussein's fucking pillows.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, and I only took it because I literally needed something to put my ass on it.
You need to have a baby just so you can rest that child
on the
pillow,
on the old bath party pillow.
Have you
yeah.
ever seen like you see on my Instagram with my kids? But like when babies are born, like the women are like, "Hey, we need to spend $400 on a photographer immediately."
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay, cool. My phone has a camera, but sure.
Yeah.
And they're just like they're always nestled up in a little basket and got their little swaddle on and take a little picture. Anyway, if you ever have a kid, you need to bring the bath party pillow.
Yeah.
Put it in a bath. That's what the child needs to have the picture taken on, is the bath party pillow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe put the beret on him.
I tried giving it to my mom because I don't really hold on to stuff a lot. I kind of gave a lot of that loot away to friends and family, and I tried giving it to my mom, and she had no interest in it because I think she didn't. I think she was creeped out by it. So I have it. Yeah.
Did resistance pick up into Tikrit? Because I know, like in other wars, for example, like it would have been a bad propaganda blow to say lose Stalingrad.
Right.
Right. When was there any, I don't know, heavier resistance into Tikrit? Like, we can't lose this city, or was everyone just on their heels at that point?
They were on their heels. I think we got into a couple gunfights on the way in, but once we were in the city, Tikrit was very well taken care of because it was Saddam's hometown. And I remember, that I had some. I think that was in Tikrit. Might have been Baghdad, but I had some homemade chicken from some lady. They seemed relatively polite there.
Yeah.
I think things kicked back up there later, but at that time they were like, "Well, I guess they're in charge now." Yeah. Iraqis are used to having other countries. They're used to being strong-armed by other foreign powers. The British were there
forever,
back in the day.
Yeah.
First
off, Iraq is, people like to say, or like Dan likes to say on our show, like Palestine's not a real place. Iraq's not.
I don't say that, by the way. Don't say me.
Holloway.
No,
yeah.
no.
I was pointing to you because
you said Dan and pointed to me.
Yeah, I just meant because we're on that show together. Sorry. Yes, Dan believes that Palestine should conquer Israel. Dan doesn't like Jews. This Dan doesn't like Jews. Other Dan doesn't like Palestinians.
No, I think it belongs to the Pope.
Yes, agreed. The Crusades need to be.
Yeah, if you want to take it all the way back to King Baldwin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. But, like, Iraq's not – that's a fake country, right? Like, it's not –
all those countries are technically fake.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
The Europeans drew up the borders.
Yeah.
They didn't think about – The Europeans, when they left Arabia, did not give a lot of thought to the way they drew those borders.
No. So that's the thing with that too. Is it? I wondered if you actually encountered it at all. Did they even have a sense of like, oh no, my country? Because it seems like they are more religiously and ethnically separated than nationally.
Because I've been to southern Iraq as well. They're different down there, but I think anywhere near and around central Iraq, there's there seems to be a sense of identity of being Iraqi.
Okay.
They know their history.
Yeah.
Babylon
It's a proud
is
history. It's
Babylon's not far from Baghdad.
And
Yeah.
say what you will about the Husseins, I think he probably brought that kind of like national pride.
Yeah.
With the Olympics, like Uday's committee for the Olympics, as bad as it was, he's like, you win or you fucking die.
Yeah,
or I
he
torture
put a
you.
lot of effort into. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say obviously Saddam Hussein was not a good guy.
No, bad dude.
But you
Brought stability.
You can't ask for anything better than a secular leader in that region.
yeah, no joke.
He kept religious extremism at bay, which is all you can ask for in that region.
Yeah. One thing, so more about that a little bit. One thing I kind of like joke about is like you obviously can't travel back in time, but maybe the closest thing you can get is going to like the Middle East or India or something, because I feel like they're kind of like socially and culturally a little behind. Like it's.
I was surprised.
Really? That's what I wanted to ask, because it seems like to me it's almost like the 16th, 17th century.
And to build off that, when you were there, did you kind of appreciate how old the land was?
Yes, I did. We went to Babylon almost like a fucking field trip after everything had died down. And we took a day trip to Babylon. The curator there, she just picked up like we were just any other tourist group.
Yeah.
We're all in uniform carrying our rifles around. Babylon was such a amazing experience to get to go see that.
How big is it?
It's pretty big.
Yeah.
The original ruins are there where the Tower of Babel was. Saddam actually invested a lot of money in rebuilding, like the Gates of Ishtar. He rebuilt those,
which is sweet.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, a big part of national pride for them, I would imagine, would be like, this is where civilization started.
We're older than the Egyptians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We invented writing.
Yeah.
Like we are the beginning.
And Iraqis, I think they understand that. But I was surprised because, again, all I knew about Iraq was from the television. I thought they all hated us and everything was about death to America because that's all you'd see on the news. One of the first times I was out of the vehicle I went into a local, like a convenience store type place.
Yeah.
Where they sold cigarettes and tea and shit. There was a poster of Britney Spears on the wall in 2003.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Poster of Britney Spears.
Saddam's kids would invite rappers over for their parties.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Saddam loved barbecue. He ate fucking pork. He brought that shit in from the United States.
It's really fucking funny.
Yeah. Again, this was not a family whose power came based on any religious stuff.
Yeah, they just took power.
Yeah.
Did you have any weird, obviously weird, not beyond them shooting?
Oh yeah, that kid I saw getting freaking jerked off. Yeah.
Do you have any like bad interactions with Iraqis? Other than
outside of the
them shooting at you?
combat part?
Yeah.
Outside of the combat part, I don't. There was some culture shock thing. They're not nice to kids with Down syndrome. I noticed.
See, that's what I mean when I'm like, yeah, it's a little bit like going back in time. Like
yeah,
social,
they would like pick. I remember it happened a couple times, and my gunner, my direct superior, his brother had Down syndrome, and we'd watch those kids were kind of mean to the Down syndrome kids.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that, and I was like, ugh, that's not good. But man, no, outside of the combat part, I don't recall any. They were all, at that time, oh, welcome, we're happy you're here. They were having a party out in the streets. I remember one night specifically when we were out in some Baghdad suburb or something like that. They were all in the streets cheering and dancing and shooting off fireworks and playing music. It was surreal.
That's really funny. That's odd.
They brought out fresh food for us, chicken and stuff. They're feeding us chai. To this day, if I go to other Arab countries, which I've been to quite a few, and I ask for chai, I'm like, can you put more sugar in it? Because the first time I ever had chai, which is a big thing out there, was in Iraq.
Yeah.
An Iraqi shop owner just made me a big, nice, hot glass of chai. And it was delicious. It was so good. And to this day, if I'm in other Arab countries, I'm like, can you put more sugar in it? And they'll be like, no, Iraqis, they do that. No, I'm like, I know, that's where that's how I like it.
That's how I had chai.
I'm American. Give me the sugar. Other Arabs, historically, this predates anything that's happened in recent years. Other Arabs kind of look down on Iraqis.
Really? So actually, you've mentioned before, maybe on the show, but certainly off mic.
That's kind of crazy though, because Baghdad was like the center of the Islamic Golden Age.
Yeah.
It's the
And it was very international. I saw white people, Asian people, black people in the streets of Baghdad.
Yeah.
It was a very international, diverse community.
It's got to be the biggest metro area, or at least like the most important metro area in the Middle East, right? Or at least used to be.
Yeah, in the Arab world.
Like what other city would even like?
I think
Dubai?
nowadays Riyadh is
up
there. Obviously Dubai.
Yeah.
But Baghdad historically was like the center
spot.
of the Arab world.
You've mentioned this before, like I said, maybe just off mic, but you fucking hate Kuwaitis. Like, 'cause you were kind of not hate like racistly, but like you were like kind of power ranking a little bit.
Yeah.
The different people from Arab countries, and you were like, I do not like Kuwaitis.
Iraqis are fucking awesome.
Yeah.
They wear blue jeans. They want the nice car and the big TV like us. They have posters of Britney Spears on their walls.
Yeah.
They're not that vastly different from us, maybe a little behind.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that's the secularism versus.
Yes, and I love Jordanians.
Yeah.
Are phenomenal people. I don't like the way Kuwaiti they're lazy.
Yeah.
They don't actual Kuwaitis. They don't work. They treat immigrants horribly.
I mean, that's
bothered me.
That's one of the countries that basically has like slaves. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like Qatar and probably
Saudi
Dubai.
Arabia.
Yeah. But we don't talk about Saudi Arabia.
Even my Filipino driver, when I was in Kuwait, I was there a couple years ago. I was doing like a USO show out there. We had a Filipino guy that was our driver. There's a lot of Filipinos in Kuwait, and he said Kuwait's 10 times better than Saudi Arabia as far as the way that he's treated.
Really?
Yeah, I think he. I don't like the way that they treat other people poorly.
Yeah.
And just like there's so much wealth there.
And then all the people don't work because they're just like rich families from way back, and they get the national oil money.
Everybody's a prince.
Yeah.
The actual true indigenous Kuwaitis are the Bedouins.
Right.
But you don't really see them unless you're in certain areas.
They're
out in the desert.
In the fucking desert.
Yeah. I remember when we used to go train at Udari Range there, which is where you go before you go into Iraq. You do some live fire stuff, do some last minute training before you go in country. The Bedouins would just hang out at these live fire ranges, and as soon as we were done in the military, the first thing you
clean up your mess, right?
You clean up the mess, you clean up the brass. The Bedouins would come out and clean it all up, and they take it back and melt it down and sell it.
Yeah. That's actually, I think Holloway has said that before too, or maybe it was some other vet that was on the Drinking Bros show, but they were just like, we would have a gunfight and then come back 20 minutes later and all the brass was gone.
Yeah.
Like in a city even. Like it was just like all it was gone.
Yeah. That Bedouin culture is very very interesting.
They're sand.
I mean, there's a lot
that Jawas.
Yeah. That's a great episode, is basically how, the Bedouins are who is Lawrence was with.
Yeah.
Very interesting culture. You see them out there just walking their camels in the middle of nowhere.
Speaking of living in the past.
Yeah.
Like that is like straight up like a 2,000 years old.
Yep.
Type of
They're
lifestyle.
still doing things. They are the Amish of the Arab world. Yeah.
I'm sure they have like a cell phone or a satellite phone.
They do, and they'll drive. They have like junk cars that they drive around.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, that's what was. Was there anything? Did you have any like surreal moments where you were just like, "Oh, I'm invading a country"?
Yeah, I think once we started getting closer into the cities and people were swarming our vehicles and all the cheering and hoopla. That's, I think, when it kicked in for me that I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing war. Holy shit.
Yeah.
When we got closer to Baghdad there. But even after we took Baghdad, we got in a big fight, which was shown on Generation Kill, because we were with them, and we got into a pretty big gunfight.
Was that at night? Was it the one? Which fight was that?
It was in a city called
scenes.
Bakwaba,
Okay.
Which I think is, if I'm not mistaken, I could be. I think it's northeast of Baghdad, and that was like a Fedayeen stronghold.
Okay.
And we went up against like Republican Guard.
Like legit dudes.
Legit uniformed Republican Guard.
Could you tell the difference in terms of like, oh, these guys are doing real military
They
things?
L-shape ambushed us.
Okay.
Yeah, so that, I mean, they did an L-shape ambush. They were firing from the front and
the side.
from the left. Yeah, our left, I believe. And this is in the middle of the night, so all I could see was out of my periscopes and
Okay, so I know
tracers bouncing around.
I know the exact scene you're talking about that in Generation Kill.
Yeah,
because there's a night combat that's like pretty.
We did that fight with them. We were leading that column, and I'll never forget because I had a mortar land in front of my vehicle and it blew up like 6 of the 8 tires. So we had to I forget all the terminology. It's been a long time.
I wouldn't know it if you told me.
Yeah, but we basically had to peel off, and I remember I had to get out of the vehicle while the gunfight was still happening, and I had to start changing those tires. And I remember seeing the recon guys pop white smoke, and they were clearing through the field where all the Republican Guard were.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
How was that? Being in the middle of a gunfight, not
Changing tires.
Changing tires, yeah.
Like, I feel if I'm on the side of a highway, I'll just be like, I'm not getting in my car. Some asshole's
Yeah.
gonna clip
Yeah,
me.
Rob's calling AAA.
100%.
Yeah.
Did you at least have like a drill? You weren't doing it with like a fucking hand wrench?
Nope, doing it with a hand wrench.
Oh,
yeah.
fuck that.
Doing it manually. I had a couple people get out and help me, but yeah, you only carry, I think, 1 spare tire on an LAV, so I was having to have.
Why were you even changing them?
Because, man, I'll tell you what, because that was pretty gnarly. That mortar exploded right in front of me. It knocked me out.
Like unconscious?
Yeah, knocked me out. I came to, and the vehicle was still driving. I'm like, okay, we're still good. And there's everyone's shooting.
Was it just the concussion?
And I could hear it was the concussion because it landed. It blew my pack up. So I didn't have any spare underwear or uniforms for the rest of the time up there because it blew my pack up. And what happened? That might be the TBI speaking.
Well, you were concussed, yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But, man, I'll never forget once the tires were changed. I've never fallen asleep so fast in my life because that adrenaline all dumped.
Yeah.
And then we slept for maybe 3 hours, and we were back at it the next morning.
Ugh.
You do hear that from a lot of like former military where they get addicted to the adrenaline, or it's just the spike during combat.
That's the highest my adrenaline's ever been in my life, and I don't know if I could have gotten addicted to it, but it is a weird, especially when you know you're going to be okay, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't lose anybody on my vehicle or anything. Everybody's okay. It is kind of a euphoric feeling for a period of time after that.
Were you just like, hell yeah?
Because you realize like someone tried to kill me. That's such a weird. The first time you truly experience, and we'd fired our weapons a few times before that.
Was that your first big engagement?
That was the first time I was like, oh, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And that's that when you realize someone tried to kill you and it was intentional. It's such. I don't know, and I'm only speaking for myself, but I wasn't angry. I wasn't scared. I wasn't. But I knew someone tried killing me.
Yeah.
And it's a weird feeling.
I can't fucking imagine that.
Yeah.
Did it get you like more locked in?
Well, I slept and it was back to the normal routine the next day. I think if I recall correctly, the next morning we woke up and we were not far from where the engagement happened, and we dropped one of the bigger bombs. So I got to watch that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like I'll never forget. I think we're driving down the road and I was like, what's that smell? And my vehicle commander grew up in rural Arkansas. He's like, chicken farms. I can. That's a chicken farm. And sure enough, it was like chicken farms. I'm having all these memories. But yeah.
Good memories?
Yeah, no, they're good memories. Yeah, except for the kid getting freaking diddled.
Yeah.
Are you saying chicken farm though because the bomb dropped and it just like roasted all the chickens?
I know a cow got killed. I remember that. My buddy Dan, who's a lawyer now in L.A., he saw the cow evaporate. Yeah.
That was my favorite story from another military dude I knew. He was like, we were actually just doing like training in the United States, and they were shooting an automatic grenade launcher that was like mounted on a Humvee.
Oh, like
something.
a Mark 19, I bet.
I think so. Yeah. And he was like, it was just a range, right? And there were a bunch of old like shitty cars down, and he was like, I was on it, and I was just emptying it, right? Like just finished off the whole mag or whatever the fuck, drum, whatever. And he was like, as the last one went, like I could feel the last one leaving, I saw a deer run out
Yeah.
through the thing. And I was like, oh, no. And it hit the fuck. He was like, the deer just
Smoked
stopped
the deer.
existing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just didn't, like,
Well,
was
and
Randy
erased.
Johnson
Deleted.
fastball.
Yeah.
All the kids on that range, as soon as everyone else saw that deer, it's a race because they're going to call ceasefire. So as soon as you see that deer, it's a race before they're telling you to stop firing.
Yeah.
Because you want to shoot that fucking thing.
I mean, and fuck deer.
Because they're going to tell you to stop firing.
Yeah.
As soon as the range officer sees the deer, like they're shutting the range down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And fuck deer, anyway.
Yeah, it's a deer.
Got to get rid of them.
We would have buffalo and Camp Pendleton there. We'd have buffalo walk onto the range while we were out there firing. We'd have to
Really?
shut everything down. Yeah.
Well, that's like a bison?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you can't kill a bison.
No.
Enough
Very strict. rules
enough
about
military members have killed bison over the years.
I was gonna say it's in our blood. We have to.
Right. Did you actually you touched on this earlier a little bit, but because you said Black Hawk Down, did like at this point it's 2003, we're kind of like peak war culture at this point because you've got like Saving Private Ryan, Black Hawk Down, Band of Brothers that come out, all
Yeah.
this shit. Did any of that paint an expectation for you at all?
Black Hawk Down did.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing that my senior year of high school. That came out like right after 9/11.
Yeah. I think it. Yeah.
I remember seeing that in high school, and I'd already joined the Marines at that point. So that movie did resonate with me a lot, and that's kind of how I imagined Iraq was going to be. Was like Black Hawk Down.
You're like, if I die, they will carry my corpse through the streets.
Right. Yeah.
Strip you naked and be like,
That was my biggest frame of reference. Was
Yeah.
probably Black Hawk Down.
how old are you in the invasion again?
19 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fucking insane.
I graduated boot camp right around my 19th birthday of 2002. I went to my infantry school, which was like 2 months, and I went to the LAV school, which was about 2 months, and then right on a plane to Kuwait.
And you didn't? Were you just on a plane with other random Marines? And
A
service
lot of the
members
guys I went to LAV school with, so a lot of those guys I interviewed in that documentary and everything like that. So we were all brand new together. Yeah. And we all showed up about a week, a week before everything kicked off. And those were the only guys I knew because I was just so brand new. I didn't know who anybody was. So to go back to what you're talking about, were they that inept?
Wait, was who that inept?
The
Superiors.
leadership.
Oh, okay.
I will say the Marine Corps was different back then because the 90s Marine Corps was in the news a lot, and not for combat stuff. They had a big hazing problem in the Marine Corps in the 90s.
Okay.
They were like doing 60 Minutes stuff on it. It was
shit.
a real problem.
Okay.
And I caught the tail end of that peacetime Marine Corps. None of my superiors, with the exceptions of a couple, first sergeants, did Desert Storm, but none of them had been in combat.
Right.
We were all doing that for the first time together, from the newest guy to,
Everyone in charge.
everyone in charge, all these officers and everything. We were all doing it for the first time. And there was still a lot of that really bad 90s Marine Corps mentality with a lot of my superiors where they were really not rough on us in a good way. They were, I see veterans romanticize, not just veterans, but active duty people. I see them romanticize this kind of hazing era in the Marine Corps. They look at it with these rose-colored glasses like it was just so better to be able to beat the shit out of someone when they fucked up back in the day. And I lived the kind of the end of that period.
Yeah.
It was not good. Hazing is bad. I deadlined a fucking vehicle when we were just outside of Baghdad. I fucked up our readiness because I was so afraid to ask a question.
Yeah.
Because they would just beat the shit out of us for no reason. Just for their own amusement.
Really?
For being new. In the middle of a war.
Well, that's the stereotype of Marines is, biggest meatheads, just kind of eat
It
crayon.
was that, yeah.
They kind of show that a little bit in Jarhead,
Yeah.
where they're like branding them and like fucking them up and stuff like that.
That shit was real.
Yeah.
Yeah. The branding stuff, I never personally witnessed that, but that was the 90s Marine Corps. It was very hazing intensive and it was not healthy. It was bad for the Marine Corps.
Interesting. I had never heard that before in my life. I was younger in the 90s, so I wasn't necessarily following hazing news in the Marines. But like you would ask a question and they would just fucking clock.
You're just afraid of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't they didn't make it. And you gotta understand, like my leaders were 2 years older than me. They were
Right.
just barely old enough to drink themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were just, you were afraid to fucking ask questions. Which, you know, when you're invading a country, you should feel comfortable asking questions if you're the new guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fucking. What happened with what was the readiness situation?
It was abysmal.
But I mean, like, with what was that incident where you deadlined the vehicle? And
Yeah. I pulled. You know, you're an infantryman, but you're doing a lot of vehicle maintenance, and I pulled the wrong plug and I drained the transmission fluid, and it busted up the engine and everything. And they fixed it within 12 hours. I got a ass chewing and but again, they were like, they would put their hands on us for far less stuff, and then I actually did a big fuck up, and then I like got my ass chewed. It was weird. Like, okay, really? I thought you were gonna hit me or something. Yeah.
Thought I was gonna get another mortar blast to the face.
Yeah. And it was bad timing because I think it was like right when we were about to go into Baghdad, but we got it fixed on time, and we went into. But also, those vehicles we were on, the LAVs, they're swim qualified. You can actually float them.
Yeah.
They have propellers. But none of us were taking those things in that river, so we still had to wait for the engineers to build bridges and stuff.
Those are kind of like, I feel like they're kind of gnarly rivers.
Yeah, they're big.
Yeah,
they're big rivers.
They're big, and I guess it depends, but they flood like violently and erratically.
Yeah,
I would be.
That was
that
was March, so it was kind of a wet wet part of the year out there. Yeah.
That how much like. Were you worried at all about urban combat versus, because you said you were in rural areas a lot, right?
For the most part, yeah.
I feel like urban combat, just like looking at stuff and reading about stuff and watching stuff.
Horrible.
Urban combat and jungle combat are the two things where I'm just like, nope.
That's why Fallujah was so
Yeah.
gnarly, was because of the urban environment.
Yeah.
If it was just our numbers versus their numbers,
Wiped.
in a rural area, that would have not barely made the news.
Right.
It was because of the urban atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they try to hunker down?
I think we did get into a couple fights inside city. I was there when that Jessica Lynch shit happened. We drove through that like the next day.
What is that? I don't know what that is.
She was in a company of army mechanics. They weren't like infantry.
Right.
And back then, I don't think the army put as much emphasis on training those kind of jobs for combat.
Yeah.
It's changed because of Iraq, but
I mean, if you're occupying a country, everyone has to be ready for combat.
Yeah, and
like when they're literally all around you at all times.
Yeah, we drove, and there were some Marines that got horribly ambushed. I think they lost like a whole squad of Marines, and we drove. I remember driving past those Amtraks after that happened, and they were all burnt out, and something terrible had happened there.
Yeah.
And that happened in an urban environment.
Dude, it seems like a nightmare. Like, it seems like it also erases like 50% of your advantage.
Yeah.
Especially
because you can't call in airstrikes on random ass buildings. You have to go in there,
clear them out.
Well, we can't.
Yeah.
Russia can.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? China probably would.
They had different SOPs.
Yeah. We're like, God damn it. We got to fucking go in.
Yeah.
And honestly, it makes sense. It would be, that's the main thing I took away, the whole world took away after the first Iraq war, was like, you can't fight these people in an open field.
In an open field?
Like in open combat, the Americans.
Oh, yes. Yeah. No, we own that. Yeah.
Like, it's just, you're not going to win.
No. And that first Desert Storm was in Kuwait, and Kuwait is nothing but desert. That's all it is until you get into the city. There is nothing else going on there but desert.
Nowhere to hide.
Where Iraq was fairly vegetated.
Yeah.
And there was a more hilly terrain in Iraq. And I've never been to northern Iraq. I hear that's one of the prettiest places on the planet.
Really?
I hear it's gorgeous up there.
We'll never know.
I want to go.
Yeah.
I hear Erbil is a cool place to go visit. And you're safe there if you're an American.
You've been back to Iraq, right?
No.
You have not?
I've been to Kuwait quite a few
Okay,
times.
okay.
Haven't been to Iraq. I flew over Iraq, but I have not been on. I have not set my foot in Iraq. I'd go back, especially like northern Iraq.
Yeah.
Check that out.
Where were you? What parts of Iraq were you in? Obviously, Tikrit and Baghdad and.
Yeah. All over.
Okay.
We did a field trip to Babylon.
After the initial invasion, were you just kind of getting sent wherever? Because presumably you're kind of on relatively in one area, moving up towards.
We went to
capital.
the border, I think, of Syria and did like a bullshit mission out there. And then after that, we the entire 1st Marine Division, because Marines are useless at that point. The offensive operation is over.
Right.
So we sat in a town called a Diwania for like a month and just got our mail and jerked off and just kind of hung around for like a month, and then we went back to it.
That's another thing. Did you encounter anybody from like Syria or neighboring countries that came over for a jihad?
From what I recall, most of the people we were fighting were uniformed Iraqis.
Couple rebels, though.
That did happen. That started happening, I think, later.
Mm-hmm.
The guys in Fallujah were fighting those guys.
Yeah. I mean, why would you even go over right away? Like, let the invasion happen. Then
Yeah. And that's precisely, like I said, there was a 3 or 4 months after the invasion was over where it was kind of back to normal.
Yeah.
There were some gunfights that happened here and there, but we felt like the war was over.
It was pretty quiet before they kind of got their shit together for a second.
Well,
for a resistance, I guess, or whatever.
I think he should absolutely I think he should be in fucking prison for this. And we can talk a lot about George Bush and Dick Cheney and Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice and all them, and all everything leading up to it. But one person I think fucked up so badly that they need to be held responsible, and it's never going to happen. Is the fucking dipshit who disbanded the Iraqi army after the invasion was over. That's nation rebuilding 101.
Yeah.
You retain the army and you get them back to work.
Yeah.
He sent a bunch of 20-year-olds with military training. He took their jobs away from them and sent them home.
Right.
It's one of the biggest fuck-ups in American history, and that guy's a dumb piece. I forget his name. I think it's Bremer. He was Bush's national security advisor. He's an absolute horrible fucking dipshit of a human being.
That I'm not getting an answer on it right away, but you are. I assume you're. Oh yeah, Paul Bremer.
Paul Bremer.
That's who came up. Yeah,
an absolute fucking piece of shit idiot.
That is. I mean, I remember people roasted Patton back in the day because he was giving essentially like Nazi officers jobs, like running the cities he had taken.
They
over.
know how to do it.
Right.
You're gonna have to leave eventually.
Right. Like he's not condoning Nazism, but he's like, I need somebody who knows how to run this town.
Yes.
Like I can't just get the baker to do it.
That guy's a fucking engineer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if he needs to go to Nuremberg later, we'll send him to Nuremberg. Right now, I'm just trying to fucking settle shit down.
Yeah. We didn't disband the fucking German army.
No. Yeah. That's yeah. Especially too, you send them home without a job and like maybe stinging from the L too, so they just have to stew about it instead of like work.
And they may not
think.
even be like super religious dudes, but they're pissed off and they're young.
Yeah.
Young pissed off men are a problem if you don't contain them.
Yeah. It's you need to focus them in the right direction,
yeah,
so to speak. The last question I have is you said you did you fight alongside the British at all?
I went back there. I went back there a second time and was with the British.
Okay,
but not during the invasion.
Okay, how was that? How are the Brits?
Cool culture, man.
Yeah,
their military is a lot. I mean, there's a reason why their military conquered half the world. They're a very adequate military, but they're a lot more loose than we are.
Really?
Yeah, they'd have beer and shit like that.
That's just the culture, man.
Yeah.
You got to have your 5 o'clock fucking pint.
Yeah. I was with a bunch of Scottish dudes.
Okay.
So I had a hard time understanding them.
Yeah, it's fucking barely English.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was weird because I could tell their officers were like English.
Yeah.
Which in the American military, like you can be from bumfuck Arkansas or like a shitty inner city neighborhood, and if you meet the qualifications, you're an officer.
Yeah, you can be a Hill person, go to ROTC at West Virginia Community College.
You're in charge of things.
Yeah.
Where I think in a lot of those definitely the Arab militaries, but a lot of those European militaries, there's still a lot of bloodline that goes on there.
Yeah.
Who gets to be an officer?
It is interesting though that there's like, which isn't a thing in the United States. It feels like it's a thing in the UK and obviously Arab countries and stuff. But like, there's a certain amount of the well-off families, a lot of them, not all of them by any means, but some number of them expect military service out of their like sons or
the Windsors.
Sons. Yeah. Like I mean, Harry was. Both of them were in the military.
Yeah, Harry deployed.
Yeah, but like there's even other family. Like there's a listener to the show, Houston. I won't say his last name. He was talking about he's dealt with British officers before and stuff like that, and they're all like absolutely well-to-do.
Yes.
And it's not, but you wouldn't, there's not going to be someone from the Walton family running a company in the U.S. military, right? There's not going to be, like, Jeff Bezos' kid is not going.
It's rare that happens.
Yeah.
There's certain political families that McCain's sons all served.
But, I don't think any of the Bushes did after H.W.
No.
Not to my knowledge.
George Bush did the National Guard.
Right. And like barely. And like I don't know that anyone from his generation below, like his kids are like Pierce Bush or Prescott Bush, who was the railroad commissioner here. I'm pretty sure they didn't serve in the military.
I'm trying to think of the last president that had one of their kids go off to military service at any point.
I mean, it would technically be.
Oh, Biden. Never mind. Biden.
Yeah.
He was a JAG. Yeah.
Yeah,
Biden did, actually.
But other than that, you didn't.
Got by those burn pits.
Yeah. I mean, every war generation has to have their Agent Orange, right? That's our Agent Orange.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, I did a story on one of those organizations recently, and the cases of cancer are highest in the Air Force and the Navy. It's not necessarily people that were around burn pits and country, although that is a thing. The Navy and Air Force people, because of all the kind of munitions and fuel that they handle.
Oh, I'm sure.
They have much higher rates of cancer.
Yeah, you're probably, and I mean the Navy too, you're dealing with, I assume, a lot of like fumes and shit in enclosed spaces.
Yeah.
Fuck that. Yeah. Not a Navy guy.
Love
the Navy.
They have the worst living conditions out of any branch.
I'm fucking sure, dude.
Yeah. I mean, people, yes, when the Marines and the Army have to go invade a country, they're sleeping in the dirt, no doubt. But day to day, the Navy is the hardest place to live day to day.
Listen, Jack, when you're on a submarine, everyone's a hand.
Yeah. Oh, man. And the officer culture in the Navy, from what I observed, because I was on a couple ships, a Marine officer and I would imagine an Army officer would never think to talk to enlisted people the way that Navy officers talk to their enlisted.
In what way?
It's officers have a lot more weight in the Navy, and they're a lot quicker to chew an enlisted person out. They take their rank structure a lot more seriously, as far as you're really not shit until you're an E7 or unless you're an officer.
Yeah.
Where in the Marine Corps you have 21-year-olds in charge of squads of people that are they're having to make life or death decisions.
I mean, I guess first off, it probably makes sense just from inheriting the legacy of like what being on a ship used to be like.
Naval tradition is so much different than any other military.
And I guess secondly, like, maybe makes sense in just that, like, you guys are out in the dirt, like you said, and maybe you got an LAV or something like that, but you're not really maybe dealing with like insanely expensive equipment,
right,
and stuff like that,
where an entire ship can sink if you fuck up.
Right.
Yeah, you might, and your officers are sleeping right next to you.
Yeah.
You're all in it together.
Yeah.
Next to Jack's poo.
Yeah.
And come.
They all saw that.
Just a huge dump right onto a freaking ammo can.
What the only question, what was your like main takeaway from your time in Iraq, both like just from what you experienced and like do you look at it now from like I was involved in history, or what is this thing's place in history?
Do you have a positive kind of memory of that looking back?
I have a positive memory of the people I did it with.
Right.
But the war itself and everything, I honestly don't think about it that often. But I think I really enjoyed getting to. I mean, that's what Generation Kill was, right? It's really a story about they weren't necessarily all buddies, but it's a story about a bunch of freaking dudes hanging out with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I fondly remember was kind of getting to share that with my buddies.
Yeah.
Did it feel like an adult field trip?
That's a good question. Babylon was a fucking field trip.
Yeah.
That was a field
Literally,
trip. It was a war. I almost died.
For sure.
But, you know, again, the guys that I did that deployment with, a lot of them went and did Fallujah.
Yeah.
That was some shit.
That strikes me from seeing your documentary and even just like stuff I saw before about Fallujah and stuff like that. That seems like the most Vietnam-esque portion of the Iraq War.
Yeah.
Where it's just like Charlie's in the trees, flashback, like just nightmare, fucking in the shit.
You didn't know what you were walking into
Right.
at any point. Yeah. Those guys, and they never treated me any different. I came back from a deployment right when they were coming back from the Fallujah deployment. And again, you know, they never treated me any differently. We picked up where we left off. They're still some of my dear friends to this day, but I could tell something had happened over there.
Yeah.
They were a little more quiet than before.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were worn out.
I can't imagine. Like,
Yeah.
literally, I cannot fucking imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. So the invasion of Iraq compared to Fallujah, that was just like might as well just been a gunfight.
Yeah. Just
Everyone's
cake
okay.
as cake as a war could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing, so in hindsight, you know, and I was 19, I had fucking energy back then. But man, we were not sleeping.
Yeah.
I was maybe averaging 3 or 4 hours a night at most.
You pounding down rip fuel?
Yeah. Well, we had all sorts of little supplements here and there we were on. You would do anything to stay awake. I would jerk it knowing that I wasn't actually gonna, you know, blow. Yeah.
Just to fucking
Just to stay awake,
Yeah.
I would I'd mix my Copenhagen if we had Copenhagen. I'd mix Copenhagen with Folgers coffee grinds.
hell yeah.
Yeah, you're using tobacco just to give yourself something to do to stay
Right.
awake. Man, you would fall asleep. You guys would be you'd be in a pause, and the vehicle, you know, everyone's stopped. You don't know why you're the lowest ranking guy. You'd maybe be stopped for 10 minutes. You'd take a nap, and you'd feel like you got fucking 8 hours of sleep in that 10-minute nap.
Yeah.
I was tired.
I was gonna ask you actually how, if at all, did smoking like kind of gas you at all? Like, were you running? Were you ever like running or something like in a gunfight, like running to get the fucking wrench for your tires, and you're just like, oh god damn it, a little.
No, you're
Yeah.
in such good shape.
Yeah.
We ran out of all the cigarettes we brought with us, all of our Marlboros and nice big American brands, and we started having to buy Iraqi brands. They were called Sumers. They were Iraqi blend
that.
tobacco. It was the nastiest shit I've ever tasted. But you smoke all of them.
Oh yeah.
It was smoking cardboard, man.
Ugh.
It was so gross. But we raided, I think it was those recon guys, raided the cigarette factory.
Udays,
and like
yeah.
the whole division got replenished with free cigarettes.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Decent ones.
They were gross. No,
Okay,
they were
they're still
Sumers.
gross.
They
Okay.
were, it was like Iraqi tobacco.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And even good cigarette tobacco is still like
It's
I feel like
gross.
the lowest form.
Yeah,
of
it's the
tobacco.
lowest form of smoking.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man. That's all. Do you have any more questions for him? That's all I got.
I don't think so, no. I think he covered everything pretty
Yeah,
well.
I appreciate this because I don't know if I could tell you a day by day recollection of everything that happened, but I have memories.
That's what I want to know. It's like for me, if it had been me, I would have at some point been like, wonder where does this fit into history? Like, where does what I just did fit into history? And I just want to honestly, my main question is just like, did that ever even occur to you? Do you think about it now? Like, what kind of historical event did I take place in?
I'm thinking about it like right now because
Yeah.
we're doing a show on it. So that is, I suppose,
Yeah.
has got me thinking about where that's stands in history. But I just assume that younger people don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because other than the invasion of Iraq and maybe Fallujah, no one really fucking gave a shit when we were there for 10 years.
Yeah.
It's just
Stops being front page news.
No, and it's like that's why I compare it to the Korean War, where it's like everyone kind of just forgot we were over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although my grandfather described Korea as the best years of his life.
Really?
Yeah.
What years was he? Was he there for like the heavy fighting in the late 40s?
Yeah, but he fixed planes. He was in the Air Force.
Oh, yeah.
And he said he just went from base to base and played basketball and fixed planes.
Do you know who were wingmen in Korea together?
It was Ted Williams
And John Glenn.
That's fucking
They flew
wild.
like fucking 10 missions together.
Yeah. Dude, Williams has bodies.
Oh, yeah. When you look at his baseball resume and you see those 3 or 4 years because of World War II and Korea.
I don't think he actually got to do anything in World War II.
No, he was late to the game, but
Yeah.
it still took him
Korea.
out of the league for like 2 years.
I know. He would have been.
Dude, he literally comes back from World War II, wins the American League MVP, batting titles,
Yeah.
goes to Korea, comes back from that, wins the fucking American League.
He's probably the greatest baseball player of all time if he didn't go to war.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and eventually, when the technology gets there, we'll unfreeze Ted Williams'
And give
head.
him those 7 years
We'll
back.
get him back in the lineup.
No, but
Yeah.
we'll interview him on the show.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Also that.
Yeah.
He'll just
Hey,
be-
we're doing an episode on Korea.
Yeah. Tell us about. I don't want to hear about your hitting. I don't want to hear about where you asking about where your son is. He's dead too. So
Where
just calm
am
down.
I?
Yeah. Just fucking answer our questions about Korea. All right, Ted. And you're
Why
going-
were you?
Why did you rip
Why
me
wouldn't
out
you
of
tell
the
anybody you were Mexican, dude? Why were you
afterlife?
so ashamed of that?
Was he?
Yeah, his mom was Mexican.
That's really funny. Yeah, he was born in California, wasn't
He's from San Diego, I believe.
he? Yeah. Well, that's all I got for today, Jack. This has been a
Dude, thank you
blast.
guys. This is good.
Where can they find you? Jacked History. Talk about that real quick.
Oh, Jack, thank you guys. And I've always said you're my favorite podcast, history podcast. I listen to you guys all the time. I started my own history show on YouTube. It's called Jacked History, Jacked History. And I do average 12 to 15 minute videos. And like I said, I'm not trying to change the world. I want people to be entertained and have something fun to tell their buddies at the bar.
Yeah. Where? What was the most recent episode on?
I did the most recent episode.
That's out, I guess.
Athletes.
Oh, yeah, comparing the athletes of ancient Rome to the athletes of today and how they're really not that much different. I think people act like athletes having certain social standing is a new phenomenon. It's not. Athletes who were at the top of their game were well compensated in ancient Rome and had pretty nice lives.
Yeah. This is like peak Rome, Pax Romana.
Yes.
Roman athletes.
Yep.
Because I know in Eastern Rome, later, we did an episode on the chariot racers because chariot racing was like the NFL to the Byzantine Empire.
Yes.
They were also.
And fandom was insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're cheering for like the Greens or
Yes.
the Reds.
Gaius Diocles, they estimate he wasn't the richest athlete of ancient Rome. He was the richest athlete of all
Ever.
time.
Let's fucking go. Hell yeah.
Yeah. So, like, again, a guy like LeBron or Michael Jordan creating generational wealth for being good at their job, that's not unheard of
Yeah.
in history.
Yeah. Good to know. Check out Jacked History on YouTube and maybe soon on Spotify.
Yeah, I'm going to toss it up on I guess you can do videos on Spotify now,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
might as well get that revenue from
Double
every
dip.
angle.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I just was able to monetize after 2 episodes. Very lucky. I'm at a good pace right now, and it's nice seeing that those dollars grow in the
Yeah.
thing every day.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's been a long time coming. I've worked for a lot of people over the years. I've done a lot of stuff for other people. This I'm doing my own thing, and it's exciting.
It's time for Jack to
Finally.
get
I
his. You
agree.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking agree.
I'm just used to being a supporting character, and I've become comfortable in that. But I gotta be the guy.
Get some main character energy now.
I gotta be a main character.
Goddamn right.
Yeah.
Well,
It's the hair, I think.
yes.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. It's hard to make a guy that looks like me a main character.
No, no.
You have
I'm
to
saying the
have
complete opposite. The hair-
Traditional looks typically.
The hair's spectacular right now. You got a little bun going.
Oh yeah. This is my professional Jack. When I want to be stupid internet Jack, that's when I let the
Yeah.
hair
Let
down.
it fly.
But we're talking serious. We're talking war here. We're talking
Yes.
serious stuff. guys.
Veteran member of a historical community.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. Yeah. Well, we invaded a country.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
To
Pretty
be
cool.
honest.
I got to loot Saddam's palace. Not a lot of people got to say that.
Saddam pillow.
You gotta, if you have that pillow, bring it.
Yeah, I do. It's in my storage facility.
We'll put it in the set.
I will
Yeah.
absolutely put that on the set.
It's
Yeah.
still like because it's a white. It's like a silk pillow, and there's a white flower, and you could tell my ass was sweating on that pillow.
Hell yeah.
I don't think I've ever washed it.
You shouldn't.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
It's
have.
like the Shroud of Turin at this point. You got to just let it be.
Yeah, yeah. I think I have some berets and other stuff. I have a Quran. You know,
Don't bring the Quran here.
you've never taken a Bible from a hotel before?
No, they're not Catholic Bibles usually, so I'm just.
Oh yeah,
It's basically fake.
yeah. I learned so much about Catholicism by listening to y'all's show. I learned more about. I know like Catholic history, obviously that's well recorded, but like what it is to be Catholic, I've learned the most about just what it's like to be Catholic listening to you guys.
It's more of a culture thing.
Yeah. It's all I equate it to like it's almost the same as being like Jewish at this point.
Right.
Not in terms of like the consequences you might encounter from
But
being
Catholic
Jewish.
guilt and Jewish guilt
Right,
is a thing.
in terms of just like the religion being as much of a culture as it is a religion.
Yeah.
It's very similar, yeah, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's not as crazy as like Mormonism or something like that because that's a whole separate
Yeah.
fucking bag of.
Yeah, but at least us and the Mormons have a football team.
True.
Oh yeah, that's true. Notre Dame and BYU.
Mhm.
Yeah, what's the Jewish college football team?
Is there even a Hebrew college? I mean, I'm sure there's a Hebrew college somewhere, but not D1.
Yeah. NYU.
No football team. They got a basketball team.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I got for
Oh,
today.
dude, it's probably Florida Atlantic.
Yeah, FAU.
Boca.
That makes sense. That's all I got for today, Jack. Thank you so much for being here. Awesome episode for
Thanks
Dan,
for having me on,
for
guys.
Dan Regester and Jack Mandaville. I'm Rob Fox.
You just got soft served.